Sports Scene, Hampton Road's premier interview show with Greg Bicouvaris, each Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11.
And you look at that, 4-4 at home, which is just average, 4-3-1 on the road. I mean, you're not going to win any games like that. They were not the same team after they beat the Packers, yet the Packers were a totally different team.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic, and listen weekly as Greg interviews distinguished guests with excellent commentary and insight. Sports Scene, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM. From Chesapeake, Virginia, the Lighthouse 100.1 presents Sports Scene. Sports Scene features local, regional, and nationally acclaimed guests and excellent interviews. Follow Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic. Now here is Greg Bicouvaris.
Sports Scene presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Sports Scene midweek online, Saturday on the radio on WPMH, AM 1010 and 100.1 FM. TuneIn.com, type WPMH in the search bar. Tell your friends about Sports Scene. Twitter @GregBic, @GJB Radio, and you can see the rest of my Twitter handles on GJBTV.com. Thank you to our military for what you do. Guest lineup presented by Mi Casita Mexican Restaurant with 2 locations in Virginia Beach. Phone line presented by Outback Steakhouse in Kempsville, now delivering. GJBTV.com. CBS College Basketball ready for the Final Four. NBA season, final stretch to the postseason. Great interviews, excellent guests, business segments, highlight commentary, what tees me off. Thank you for listening to Sports Scene. We love our regulars, tourists who listen online and on the radio. Father George Chioros is our featured guest from the Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News. Stay tuned. Mark your calendar for May 30th to June 2nd as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News presents the Newport News Greek Festival. Eat, drink, and celebrate authentic Greek culture on the peninsula. Located at 60 Traverse Road off exit 258B on Route 17 in Newport News. For more, log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org. See you May 30th to June 2nd at the Newport News Greek Festival.
Opa! Catch up on archived editions of Sports Scene by going to gjbtv.com and clicking the YouTube image on the homepage. Now back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
And welcome back to Sports Scene. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us @GregBic on Twitter for our weekly show. It's a pleasure to have in the studio Father George Chioros, the priest of Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News in his 20th year. Father George, good to see you.
Good to see you too as well, Greg.
Very good, very good. Tell us about your background. Of course, you're from the Midwest, and of course, that's a big sports area.
I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Oldest son of Greek immigrants. Grew up on the South Side in the Oak Lawn and then Palos Hills area of Chicago. After high school, went to college, Hellenic College, graduated in 86, and then seminary, and graduated seminary in 1989.
You always told us in church, for those that go to church every Sunday, that you wanted to be a journalist at one time.
I did. I wanted to be a journalist. I just love the idea of writing, expressing myself, and God had other plans.
Absolutely. 30th year in priesthood as well. Well, talk a little sports before we delve into the topics of religion here. Longtime White Sox fan, of course, back in the early 80s, when Harold Baines was there, they were a very good team.
They were. We hosted the All-Star game in 1983. A good team, decent team. The 70s were not good years, but in the 80s, and then 2005, we won the World Series, and hopefully we'll win again before some of us enter God's kingdom, but we'll see.
They had a really good pitcher a few years ago, Sale, but he ended up going to the Red Sox.
Correct.
So that kind of moved the White Sox into a different direction.
It is what it is.
Yeah, but of course they're always in the tough American League. And talking to Father George, what about football? The Bears have had their success, but it's been long gaps.
Yeah, won the Super Bowl, and it was not a good playoff game when that kicker missed the field goal, but it is what it is. The Monsters of the Midway, they were the lean years when they were 4-10 when I was growing up, and then, of course, they would periodically make the playoffs, but then, of course, winning the Super Bowl, and a terrific year this past year, and hopefully we'll do the same this year.
Yeah, everything is coming to full circle. The Bulls won all their championships with Michael Jordan. Now they're rebuilding now.
Oh, absolutely. They're rebuilding. There's no question. There's 2-3 teams that are worse than them. It's a rebuilding year, and it was a wonderful time to be there when they were winning the championships with Jordan and Pippen and Bill Cartwright and John Paxson and Phil Jackson as the coach. It was a great experience just going to the games at the Chicago Stadium.
Very good. Let's talk about religion here. We're in the Lent season right now.
We are.
Explain Lent for the various religions.
Well, in our case, we see that Lent is 40 days plus Holy Week, a time for prayer, devotion, self-awareness, self-examination. The Church prescribes, as we hear in Scripture, prayer and fasting. And it's a time to look at ourselves and be, kind of recommit ourselves. Extra services, and they're not just entitled for the priest to get off the streets. It's important for the whole community, and a chance for us to develop ourselves as a community, as a Christian community.
I think it's a perfect time because spring is always a renewal, like you said, and you kind of start over, you refresh yourself, but you look at yourself and reflect a lot too.
You do. Everybody needs a just hard look at themselves. No one's perfect. We know that. And there's always room for improvement. And I think it's a chance for us to really take a good, hard look at ourselves, our relationships with others. It's so hard to forgive for some, but it's so easy for so many to be critical. And we don't need that. And that's not how we were made in the image and likeness of God.
Right. I think you made a great point. It's, you never forget. You can forgive. I think you have to forgive yourself first, and realize that you can't rely on man.
Yeah, and relationships. We're all in relationships with people, coworkers, neighbors, and things happen. It's unfortunate, but they do, and it's nothing can't be mended.
Right. Talking to Father George, St. Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News. This is on Sports Scene. It will also be archived as well on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube year-round as well for your enjoyment. Father George, you talk about some of the sacraments too, and of course Easter is a big time for the churches, for a lot of churches, whether it's the Catholic Church or the Christian Church, and Holy Week is very important. I got to admit, before we start chatting about that, is I'm impressed that over the years I've seen you the last 20 years, that sometimes you have a fellow priest to help. You've had your father-in-law, but a lot of times you're doing this solo. Is that common for your colleagues around the country?
Well, we have a shortage of priests. So, in many cases, churches that could use 2 or 3 priests, we don't have them. We just don't have them. And we have some small parishes that can't go full-time, and we have people who are trying to fill them just to be able to do the services. So, there is a shortage of clergy. So, something that we need to address. We also, as many other faiths, we have issues with people not going to church as much as they used to. You look at any magazines; they're talking about the decline in church attendance across the country. If it was just us, I'd say, okay, what are we doing wrong? But it seems to be a problem. It's a national problem, and churches that were at one time flourishing have seen the opposite.
I remember 30 years ago or so, when we were all kids, that you would see traditionally at the Greek Orthodox Church, mostly Greek descent there 30 or 40 years ago. That has totally changed now. And you made a good point several years ago, when people get married, 9 times out of 10, it's 80% one is not Greek Orthodox.
Yeah, I mean, we're in America now. We've assimilated. Your beloved mother, my parents from the same part of Greece, they came over for a better life. But as we become generational upon generations, we see that things change. Mm-hmm. But also, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us for those non-Orthodox who either marry into the faith or those who convert, it's an opportunity not only for growth, but awareness mm-hmm. of the faith. And, you look at the methods of media that we have, the methods of communication that we have between the internet, Facebook, the way to get the message out and to research. When we were kids, where'd you do your research? You went to the library. Well, obviously we know things are different now, and we have so many tools, ministry tools out there that can help us promote and explain the faith.
Right, because totally, I don't care how old you are, when you experience Holy Week and you go to church, and I'm privileged to be on the parish council and just having to go to a lot of services because I want to, but I also really feel better when I do go, whether you're on the board or not. You just feel like an awakening when you go to church during that time, because it's spring, it's Easter coming up, you're fasting, whether for a day or every day. Some people do it for 40 straight days, others don't, but you do feel mind and body and spirit all working together, a renewal in the spring.
It is. The spring brings out the flowers, the colors. We haven't really had a winter here versus other parts of the country, but it's time for change.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful time for change where we can really look and go to the next level.
Right. Well, you talk about the church in Newport News. It's on 60 Traverse Road. The history is, of course, and it goes back to a lot of the Greek Americans that came here before the Newport News Church was built on Washington Avenue in 1949, that they went to St. Paul's. But you have an update on that church. The church has evolved.
Again, the downtown area of Newport News has seen a change. The vibrancy of downtown, where people all lived in Newport News, downtown Newport News, people walked to church, those days are gone. So as downtown areas change, parishes move, as we did from west to Traverse Road, it's a sign of the times that the churches that are in the downtown area are seeing a different kind of ministry. St. Vincent de Paul with their homeless ministry, soup kitchen, thriving because they are providing a ministry that's needed downtown. But the old days of people walking to church, and those are gone.
Right. I mean, I think even my dad went to St. Paul's for a little bit during that time,
sure.
Before 49, because it's hard to believe the Newport News Church on Traverse Road has been there since 82. You're talking 37 years, and the other church downtown was there 33. So that makes 70, and 70 is special. Right.
Our church was founded in 1949, so this marks our 70th year of consecutive ministry, and that's a milestone in a parish's life. Some of the parishes have had their 100th anniversary. We'll get there one day. But to see 70 years of consecutive ministry and the dream of the founders, those early founders, those immigrant men and women who did what needed to be done. They put their hands in their pockets. They gave because they wanted a church. They needed a church. And it was their ministry, their mission to build and sustain that church.
Yeah, I know my grandfather and grandmother were part of it on my dad's side of the building of the old church, but you would see the architecture of it, and you got to wonder what a lot of them were thinking, because it's not that long ago when they built it, but it would be totally different from today's thinking of architecture.
Yeah, I mean, the Byzantine style of churches is traditional, and any church that's built has to have its plans approved by the hierarch, and we just don't put prefab buildings up. That's not in our Orthodox tradition, and it's up to us to maintain that rich Orthodox tradition.
And that church is sustained. The building is still there downtown, folks. Of course, it hasn't been open for years, so we encourage you to go to the one on 60 Traverse Road in Newport News. Still very modern, and both buildings are beautiful in their own right, but of course you need upkeep on everything. All right, when we come back with Father George, we're going to talk about eternal life. We're going to talk more about religion, more about the Greek education and religion as well, and the Orthodox belief. This is Sports Scene, going a little bit beyond the scene here, talking a little bit of religion today. Stay tuned.
Sports Scene, Hampton Road's premier interview show with Greg Bicouvaris, each Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11.
And you look at that, 4-4 at home, which is just average, 4-3-1 on the road. I mean, you're not going to win any games like that. They were not the same team after they beat the Packers, yet the Packers were a totally different team.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic and listen weekly as Greg interviews distinguished guests with excellent commentary and insight. Sports Scene, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM. Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic. Email bicogb@hotmail.com. Now back to Greg Bicouvaris in the Hampton Roads OnlineMall.com studios.
Back on Sports Scene, of course, archived on YouTube, Twitter, every Saturday morning on tunein.com. Type in WPMH in the search bar, 1010 AM, 100.1 FM. Greg Bicouvaris along with Father George and Andrew, our producer. Three of us all from Newport News, of course, broadcasting all over Hampton Roads and beyond. Father George, spring training, that's kind of a good term in baseball because it also is relevant to religion, that spring training, we're trying to renew ourselves too. But on the lighter side, your Cubs and White Sox, what are your predictions for this year?
Well, I would hope the White Sox do better than they did last year. It was not a good year. I saw something, the preliminary had only Detroit finishing worse than them in the AL Central, and something I saw that they had someone picked the Cubs to finish last in the NL Central. I find that hard to believe, but again, baseball's a long season, 162 games plus playoffs. Anything can happen. Anybody on a given day can beat anybody. So we shall see.
Right. And, of course, March Madness is here. Either Duke or the field. I will say Duke if they had Zion, but I know you like to watch a lot of college basketball. I know we're in the state of Virginia. We'd like to see Virginia move on this year.
I think we all would like to see Virginia do better than they did last year.
Yes.
Getting knocked out in the first round. And I think they will. I'm sure they'll do better than they did last year.
Talk about the church, the hours, and some of the upcoming services that you generally have leading up to Holy Week.
Well, we have our Sunday liturgy every Sunday, the Orthros, the Matin service at 8:45, and the Divine Liturgy at 10. Our Lenten season has a Compline service, an after-dinner service, beginning at 6 on Monday evenings and on 6 p.m. on Wednesday evenings, the Liturgy of the Pre-Sanctified Gifts, a Lenten liturgy, and also on Friday evenings, the Salutation services that begin at 7 p.m. So if you look at the liturgical cycle, the life of the church, you can see quite a few services and opportunity for our faithful to come to the services. And the Compline and the Pre-Sanctified Liturgy have readings, so we do encourage our people to help participate in the readings of the Psalms, a chance for them to participate in the liturgical life of the church.
Absolutely. Like you said, you deal with all different types of personalities, and you've seen that whether you were in the Midwest or in Roanoke or other churches too, and talking to your colleagues as well. Some people just want to go to church, and that's it. Others want to be all-inclusive, be involved in clubs, go to every wedding they can go to. But really, it comes down to the premises, going to church and being a good Christian.
Right. The call to worship is there, and we would hope that our people will answer the call. And again, some people are not into ministries and they want to come to church, they light their candle, they enhance their prayer life, and that's fine. I get it, and I understand, but I think part of the what we all need to do is that there is plenty of work to be done, and each one of us has this God-given talent to do what needs to be done, and not to sit on our hands, but to answer the Lord's call. Matthew 25, the ministry is there. The attempts of ministry are there. We just have to answer the call.
And, of course, the general public, and, of course, you hear this all the time, whether you're at a restaurant or at a social event with your family, is like, when is the Greek festival? Yours truly does the marketing. Father George is the priest. We have a steering committee led by Chris Zambis. But those two events are what the public knows us for, but they also know us for the big gold dome right there on the interstate. So they're aware of our facility.
But what's important for us is to know that we also participate in the Port Project, where we have the homeless in our facility for a week, usually about 10 days before Christmas, that we should be known for our ministries, our presence, the ministries that are being done by so many of the organizations, like our Ladies Philoptikos, our Ladies Auxiliary, that every Monday, the acts of kindness that go and minister to cancer patients. It's a wonderful thing, and it's every Monday. The youth, in their own way to experience and promote orthodoxy, is what holds the church together.
Right, and of course, just as you know, we'll talk about the festival in just a moment. We have the Goya, which to me, I always said the Goya are the future parish council members, the Goya is, but we need to see more kids involved in the church in the Goya, and but that's true, like Father George said, in pretty much a lot of the churches. But like you said, whether it's the Golden Hearts or the youth or the parish council or the clergy or your people up there helping you with the psalties of the church, it takes a village to get it done.
And I think what's great here about Hampton Roads is that we have the area Orthodox churches, are the clergy. We meet once a month. We're doing projects together. We prepared over 300 backpacks for needy kids this past summer. The church is united in a project. I think that's important. Unification, in that we're doing the ministry as a united group, and that our faithful can see a project, a worthwhile project, and support it. And here we have 300 kids. We're ready for school with backpacks.
Right. If you walk into the lobby of our church, you'll see, food for the needy that's there as well in the front entrance. Yeah. Yep. And of course, Father George mentioned the port, and you talked to me told me about the port, and I'm glad I had a chance to be part of it. It's something better than yourself, and you really felt nice to help those people during the holiday season, where you see, and you had mentioned a few months ago with the facility on Warwick Boulevard now that's open in Newport News, but several churches, not just the Greek Orthodox Church, really played a part during the holiday season for the port.
Well, port stands for People Offering Resources Together, and that runs from November to the end of March. And a parish will be a site parish, as we are, and in our case, there were 5 parishes and 2 realty firms that came together that week to not only prepare dinner and also breakfast the next morning, but with their volunteers. And what a wonderful thing in our case, our day, that our youth were chanting the Christmas carols while their parents and advisors and our community were doing what needed to be done as we housed the homeless that week.
Talking to Father George, this is Sports Scene, going beyond the scene, talking a little religion and sports today, every Saturday morning from 10 to 11, right here on WPMH. Glad you're with us, at Greg Bick on Twitter. Father, you always mention and love your weekly sermons when you talk to the youth and the adults both right before we collect the trays. Always enjoy that part. And I like to stand and listen in church too, as well, like we all do. Learn a lot from you each week and the different divine liturgy. But you talk about the future and the growth. It depends on people, right? I mean, no matter what church you go to, you talk about the attendance. You see baptisms. You've done tons of weddings the last 30 years, and of course, you mentioned the funerals, unfortunately. But that's one thing that all Christians have to realize is the eternal life part. Talk about that.
Well, our goal as Orthodox Christians is to enter God's kingdom, and as we pray at every funeral service for eternal memory of the departed, we read that it's important that as we enter God's kingdom, that we remember the good deeds that we did, but also that our entire life is a time frame of doing God's work and not missing the opportunities that we, and as we look at God's kingdom where there's no pain, sorrow, or suffering, we see suffering, pain here on earth, but we would, when we enter God's kingdom where there is no pain, sorrow, or suffering, a place of joy and happiness.
Mm-hmm. Talk about communion. Each church has different ways of doing it, and talk about the proper way of taking communion.
Well, again, I'm not critical of any other faith. That's not my style. During the Divine Liturgy, at the consecration, a very solemn part of the liturgy, the priest prays for the body, for the bread and wine to be turned into the body and blood of Christ. The Eucharist is offered at every liturgy in the Orthodox Church, and as Holy Communion is one of the 7 sacraments, it is really the foundation of our liturgy is the receiving of Holy Communion, but there's also preparation, prayer, fasting, that it's not something should be seen as automatic, but also something that should be prayed about and focused about.
True. Final few moments here with Father George talking about St. Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church. Our festival is May 30th to June 2nd, as well our 52nd annual this spring. Of course, we have one in the fall. For more, log on to NewportNewsGreekFestival.org as well. Of course, Sunday services are, like he said, begin at 8:45 and then continue starting at 10 o'clock as well. So, and we welcome everyone to go to the church, correct, Father?
Yes. Well, we are an opening community, and we have a greeter in the narthex every Sunday. We love visitors. We've had visiting groups. We are there to showcase the richness of our Orthodox faith.
And this will be in the Oyster Pointer as well in May for our ad. We have great church tours during the festival.
We do. The church is open throughout the 40-plus hours of the festival. There are people in there who will answer questions. There are tours at 1, 4, and 7 during the festival, but there are people there to not only answer questions, give out materials, stir people in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about that as well, and it's something that's year-round. Like you always say during the spring and the summer, is that Christians don't take a vacation from church. I mean, church is always there. Even where you're not there, it should still be in your mind and body, correct?
Absolutely, and I do encourage people when they're traveling to seek out the closest local church. We may vacate from certain things, but I think it's unfortunate that we tend to like to vacate from church services during the summer. And we see signs of other churches welcoming people back in September. Got to welcome them back. They should have been there anyway. But nevertheless, it is what it is. And we would hope that people will be very smart in what they choose and what to vacate from.
Leave us with the final word. You always hear this from everybody that cleanliness is godliness. You hear that line. Mm-hmm. Tell us some other anecdotes that the general public can go by.
Well, I think if you look at the words of Scripture, I think there's great mission statements and learning materials there. I think everybody has their own way of thinking and things that stick in their minds, but I think bottom line is that it is what it is, and what could be can be.
Right, and look at yourself and reflect. Father George, thank you for enlightening us today about the Greek
Pleasure.
Orthodox faith, and of course for more, this will be on the Greek Festival website, archived a little bit later this spring. So for Father George and Andrew, stay tuned for our next segment. This is Sports Scene. Will continue after these messages. Mark your calendar for May 30th to June 2nd as St. Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News presents the Newport News Greek Festival. Eat, drink, and celebrate authentic Greek culture on the peninsula. Located at 60 Traverse Road off exit 258B on Route 17 in Newport News. For more, log on to NewportNewsGreekFestival.org. See you May 30th to June 2nd at the Newport News Greek Festival.
Opa! Good junk, bad junk. Old electronics, computers, cables in a box laying around. What's to be done? Fortunately, Providence Computers in Chesapeake is your 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily drop-off location for recycling all such stuff. We even appraise and purchase the newer items for hard, cold cash. Providence Computers is located at 473 Kempsell Road in Chesapeake, behind Wawa and next to Walmart. If it's your home or business, we welcome the chance to partner with you to recycle sensibly. Call us today, 382-7768, and see us at providencecomputers.com.
You are listening to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris. Now, back to Greg. It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
Highlights, gjbtv.com, hrsmhof.com. Check out hrsmhof.com for the big ceremony coming up in the spring. HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Go to gjbtv.com for archive shows. Click the YouTube link on the homepage for great archived audio and video, not just Sports Scene, but commercials as well. Our question of the day presented by Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News to our esteemed producer, Andrew. Andrew, it is coming up on Easter and Lent. Of course, we're all Christians here. What do you fear the most?
You know, I think as a parent, your fears and your whole view of life begins to change a little bit. And I think in this instance, it's true where my fears now are so wrapped up in their lives and in what happens with them. And I think my greatest fears are just being separated from my children, of something horrible happening to them. You know, I'd rather it happen to me than happen to one of my own kids. So unfortunately, I spend quite a bit of time worrying and fretting over what may happen to them. And I continue to work on trying to release that and trust God and be better at just putting those thoughts out of my mind.
And I want to thank our good friends at Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News. Great place for lunch and dinner. Great salads, boneless traditional wings, burgers, wraps, sandwiches, great beverages, adult beverages, desserts, the kid menu, all the games on TV, wings, beer, sports. Go by and see Paul and his wonderful attentive staff 7 days a week right next to Patrick Henry Mall on Jefferson Avenue at 12150 Jefferson Avenue in Newport News. Go by and give them a call at 249-3999. Download their app for some great points at Buffalo Wild Wings in Newport News, your place for sports and your place for college basketball and great food this season. Mark your calendar for May 30th to June 2nd as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News presents the Newport News Greek Festival. Eat, drink, and celebrate authentic Greek culture on the peninsula. Located at 60 Traverse Road off exit 258B on Route 17 in Newport News. For more, log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org. See you May 30th to June 2nd at the Newport News Greek Festival.
Opa! Now you can fly anywhere in the world and pay discount prices on your airline tickets. Book a flight today to London, Paris, Madrid, or anywhere else you want to go and pay a lot less guaranteed. Call the International Travel Department right now at Low Cost Airlines.
800-648-9175. 800-648-9175. That's 800-648-9175.
Catch up on archived editions of Sports Scene by going to gjbtv.com and clicking the YouTube image on the homepage. Now back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
We'd like to welcome the men and women in uniform serving around the world. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for listening to Sports Scene on YouTube, TuneIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I want to thank our good friends at Outback Steakhouse in Kempsell and Virginia Beach. Lunch or dinner 7 days a week. Spacious, nice dining area. They deliver. Great bar, great atmosphere, great for Easter, special occasions. Excellent burgers, steaks, soups, salads, seafood, chicken, pasta as well. Great appetizers, desserts. Of course, like them on Facebook. Visit them at 1255 Fordham Drive in Virginia Beach. Give Outback Steakhouse a call at 523-4832. Good food as well at Outback Steakhouse. Great staff led by Mike Jarrett. It's a pleasure now to talk to our monthly regular guest from the Marksman and Newport News, George McClain, owner-operator. How are you, my friend?
Doing well, Greg. How about yourself?
Very good. Before we start talking about gun and gun safety in your store, let's talk about the retail end of your store. What's it like for a staff, of course, with different people walking in every day? Sometimes you have regulars, sometimes you have newcomers, sometimes you have locals, which are the feature, and, of course, tourists that walk in as well. They all have different questions and all have different demands. Correct, George?
Yeah, that's pretty standard. So everyone's got something coming from a different direction. So it's whatever their interests are in the shooting world, or self-defense, getting concealed permits, or just wanting to purchase a gun, or if they have one, wanting to go in and shoot. So a lot of folks, it's their first time in, and so we kind of give them the rundown and answer all their questions, get them comfortable with where they are, and find out what they want to do.
From a business, even though you're an indoor facility for the most part, and of course you're located right there in Newport News, you're coming into the spring now. It's different from the winter where it's pretty cold and people are pretty much buttoned up indoors, but now they're looking for an activity to do, and the Marksman's a perfect place for that activity as well.
Well, it most certainly is. It like you mentioned, is indoors. And which means when it's raining, you can still go ahead and shoot. A lot of folks living in the city do not have an outdoor place to shoot anyway, and it's a lot of the localities around the area all have restrictions on shooting a handgun or shooting guns, period, unless you're in either an outdoor or an indoor range, and so our choices are quite limited. So we try to be accommodating to everyone, but we're primarily a handgun range, so the high-powered rifle stuff, the range backstop is just not geared to handle that. We do allow the guys with the AR type, 223, 5.56 firearms to purchase our frangible ammo, and so they can bring those rifles on. But it's pretty much still a handgun facility.
Is there like an interview process? I know you do a background check of people that want to come in and use a gun at your facility. What is the protocol for that? Because I'm sure a lot of people ask that question.
Well, the only background check that gets done is when you're purchasing a firearm, and that's a federal, state, and federal required check that gets done, and paperwork that has to be done. As far as someone just coming in to use the facility, we obviously want to make sure that they're qualified. It would be something akin to going down to possibly Avis Rent-A-Car and wanting to rent a car. They're going to ask certain questions, and you're going to have to show them your driver's license. They're going to make sure that you're qualified to rent that car. We're going to do kind of the same thing, even though you don't have to have a license to shoot, but we want to know how much experience you have. And the reason we do that is the person that's going to be standing beside of you on the range in the next lane wants to make certain that whoever is beside of them is just as qualified as far as a safety standpoint as they are. We want our folks to not just feel safe, but to actually be safe. And in order to do that, you have to have a certain level that you need to understand about.
Absolutely. You're talking to George McClain, always learning something from George. We encourage people to go to the Marksman in Newport News. You can Google it as well. Like them on Facebook with a lot of great updates. We always learn something in our great YouTube audience as well, and our radio audience and our TuneIn audience. So we have a lot of different audiences that listen to this show. We want to thank you for your time and your talent and your treasure. George, and you see this in the news all the time. I read something recently where somebody got into an argument with somebody at a sporting event, and they knew each other. They brought it off the sporting event, off of the property, and it ended up in a fatality. So you never know when you're going in public who are you going to run into, who you're going to bump into. And really, I guess the whole philosophy of life is when you're out in public for several hours to keep your cool, because it's not worth losing a life over for an argument with anybody. Well,
that's very true. It's as adults, we need to be able to act like adults, and that's obviously entails keeping a hand on your emotions and not letting things get out of whack. It's real easy to say, well, be the good Boy Scout and always be prepared, but being prepared sometimes when you're defending yourself against that kind of an argument, you find out that you're using lethal force to defend against a non-lethal attack, and that's illegal. You can't do that. Somebody, if it's a punch in the nose, and if that's all it is, you can't pull your gun out and shoot somebody. or pull a knife out and use that to defend yourself and call that self-defense. It's not.
Right, but in this case, if somebody comes on your property with a gun, that's totally different. I mean, they're trying to shoot you or something like that, then you have every right to defend yourself then, correct?
It depends.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's other states that you basically, all you have to do is cross somebody's threshold and you're at their mercy. Virginia is not one of those states. If somebody breaks into your home at 1 o'clock in the morning, that is not automatic grounds for lethal force self-defense in the state of Virginia. You still have to have a reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury from that person, which means they need to commit an overt or an obvious act that would put you in that reasonable fear other than breaking into your home. Okay, that's been used or tried to be used as a defense in the past. It does not work. If someone breaks into your home and they have a firearm or another type of weapon and they're coming at you with that, that's a whole different deal. Okay, now that's that overt act that would put any sane person in a reasonable fear for their life. So when I say it depends. It's not to be standoffish. Don't shoot the messenger. I don't write the laws. But it's to get people to understand the way they're written and what the intention is. Now, I'm not an attorney, but I can read the statute as well as the next guy.
Absolutely. Talking to George McClain, owner of the Marksman and Newport News. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us in Sports Scene every Saturday from 10 to 11 on the radio and on TuneIn. And, of course, you mentioned that, but also when you deal with the public, you might get into an argument or somebody might throw an insult at you or a cut. In my opinion, is it really worth it, folks? It's best sometimes just to walk away instead of having to argue, because that old expression, it does take two to argue.
Well, that's right, and the old adage that we heard about is kids, sticks and stones and all that kind of stuff. Walk away, walk away from.
George, you mentioned your West Virginia roots, and of course, Virginia borders West Virginia. It also borders Maryland, and also borders North Carolina as well. You can get into several different jurisdictions, but Virginia and West Virginia, what are the biggest differences you see from living in both of those states?
Well, not a lot of differences. A lot has been the same, and we've got the reciprocity with the gun permits. Although West Virginia, as of last year, no longer requires a permit, but there's a couple of states. Well, one in particular, Vermont, comes up, which does not border us. They don't require a permit either, but they don't issue permits. And the whole thing, I got in a conversation with a lot of folks back in West Virginia was entertaining this, and I said, they need to be smart. If they don't want to require a permit, that's fine. That's one thing. But they still need to keep the permit process for those residents who want to get a permit and travel out of state. Because without a permit, you have no reciprocity. You have to have the permit issued by your home state, and the permit we're talking about is a concealed permit issued by your home state, so that when you do cross the state line into Virginia or other neighboring states from West Virginia, that they would then have reciprocity, meaning that it would be legal for them to carry that concealed handgun in this other state. Without a permit, once they cross the state line out of West Virginia, they have no right to carry at that point.
Now, in your car, are you okay if you have the right to carry? Are you allowed to have it in your car as well? I guess it doesn't matter whether you're moving from one state to another. How does that work?
Well, it does, and several states look at that even differently. Georgia comes to mind. Georgia is one of the states where they basically look at your vehicle as most places would look at your house, and as long as the firearm remains in the car, they don't have a lot to say about it. You take it out of that vehicle, and now you have to have that concealed permit to carry that concealed. So, if you're going to be traveling with the Virginia permit, you need to do your own due diligence on these states that you're going to be traveling in, and make sure that you understand each of those states' firearms laws, and they're not all the same.
Right. We're going to take a short break. Come back with the remainder interview with George McClain from the Marksman after this.
Sports and Imports, located at 1322 Transylvania Avenue in Chesapeake. Sports and Imports specializes in all European models without the European price. ASE certified and Bosch certified. Don't waste time and money guessing what the problem is. Sports and Imports can pinpoint the problem and fix it the first time. Make an appointment today. Financing is available. Visit sportsandimports.net or call 545-9394. Catch up on archived editions of Sports Scene by going to gjbtv.com and clicking the YouTube image on the homepage. Now back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
Back with George McClain from the Marksman and Newport News. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us for Sports Scene every Saturday morning from 10 to 11 on AM 1010 and 100.1 FM, anywhere in the world on tunein.com by typing WPMH in the search bar. We mentioned about traveling, George, and guns, but how about sometimes when you walk into a business, even though you have a right to carry, some business owners and some stores and some storefronts get offended or they get nervous or they get scared. Do they have a right to tell the person to leave?
Yes. As a matter of fact, whether or not you can carry into a building, a facility of any kind, is contingent upon the property owner allowing that. So whoever owns the property, if they say no firearms on this property, then it's no firearms on that property, and you have no other option but to not carry legally on that property. If by some chance you walk on the property, you don't see their sign, or don't know that they don't allow firearms, and you're on that property, and then if they then come to knowledge that you are armed, and they ask you to leave, then you must leave. And if you don't leave, they can have you arrested. You will be charged with criminal trespassing at that point, which is a Class 1 misdemeanor. And in the state of Virginia, that's punishable by a $2,500 fine and or 1 year in jail. So if you got a lot of time on your hands and got deep pockets, I guess you could mess around with things like that, but most people would rather not. So, again, if you're going to be going into a place armed, know the places that allow it and the places that don't.
Absolutely. Switching gears back to the store of the Marksman, the phone number is 757-872-4130, open 7 days a week. Tell us about Military Mondays, First Responder Fridays, and any extra specials as well going on now.
Well, I'll start with our first and our 15th of the month. Every month we have free range days for military and the law enforcement, first responders. And so when we say free range, what we're talking about is your range fee. Okay, so regardless if you're typically for military coming in on any day of the week, their range fee is $12 versus $16 for someone just coming off the street. If you got a concealed permit, it's $14. So you get a discount for having the concealed permit. You get a discount for military or law enforcement. So that's first and the 15th. On every other day of the week, you get that discount of the $12. But on Mondays, you got Military Mondays, so you get another 20% off that $12. So that'll save you another $2.40 there. First Responder Friday, same thing. So come in, take advantage of it. Save some bucks on Tuesday. Every Tuesday is a 2 for Tuesday. So whoever you are, it's a 2 for 1 deal. So bring a friend, and you get in for the price of one.
You can't beat that as well. Talking to George McClain as well, and right here on Sports Scene at the Marksman, and talk about the facility, how it's changed, or has it changed a lot from the time you have owned it?
Well, I purchased it in June of 2012, and we have made some changes in the retail side. Most of it was as a result of the break-in that we had back in September 2015. We had the unfortunate experience of having someone driving a car through the front of the building, and so we had to repair all of that. And as a result of part of what happened there, we split the lobby area to have two separate sides. So now if you're coming in and just doing retail, you want to look at guns or accessories or whatever as you walk into the door, that register, everything's on the left side. If you're coming just to come into the range to shoot, that's on the right side. So that's operationally, that's probably been the biggest change. Everything else was pretty much the same operation that we had before I bought it. I took over as general manager in 2010. So most of the changes that I did then. So we still run the classes for the armed guards. This is the DCJS certified courses that we do. Then we have the retail side, and then we have the shooting side. So we got that 3-layer diversification that we try to keep going, and it's been fairly successful over the years. So we're looking, we're off to a good start this year, and then hope it continues.
Absolutely. George, for the locals and the tourists that have not been to your facility, what's the best way to get there from Jefferson Avenue or Warwick Boulevard?
Well, the landmarks, of course, there's a lot of construction going on Warwick. You got some new apartments and stuff they're building there, but if you're coming off of Warwick, follow the signs to Dozier Middle School. You're actually going right past the school, crossing the railroad tracks. As soon as you cross the railroad tracks, we're the first building on the right. If you're coming off of Jefferson, if anyone knows where Dodge's Chicken is, right there on that corner, that's Industrial Park Drive. And if you're going westbound on Jefferson, you want to take a left there at Dodge's. If you're coming eastbound, you're going to take a right there at the Hardee's, and we'll be the last facility on the left before you cross the railroad tracks.
Absolutely. The phone number is 872-4130. That's 872-4130. Well, George, some of the basic stuff, too, because we mentioned some of the laws of the state. 18 for the military, 21 to drink, 18 to vote. How old are you in order to buy a gun?
A handgun, you have to be 21. Mm-hmm. You can purchase a long gun at 18, but to purchase a handgun, you got to be 21.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of background checks to go with it, right? You just can't walk in there like you're buying a sub or a soda.
No, you have the federal form 4473, and then you have the state SB 65. So you're going to have two of those documents that's got to be filled out. You've got to have a picture ID with your current address on it. If you're military, you can have your military ID card with your current orders. And these have to be PCS, which are your permanent change of station orders. That's stationing you at a Virginia military base. Mm-hmm. Once you have that, you're treated as a resident of the state, and you can purchase firearms on your orders. So it's I guess most of the problems that we run into if people have a PO box on their driver's license, then they need a second ID that has their physical address on that, mm-hmm. and that's got to be a government issued ID. Okay, it can't just be a piece of mail.
Right.
So you want something, your voter's registration, or we would take that, or a concealed permit that anything issued by a branch of the government would be acceptable. But most folks, a lot of times, if they move, they don't follow through and get an updated driver's license with their new current address, and that's one of the requirements that you have to have.
Very good. George McClain, the owner of the Marksman, thank you for your time, your talent, and your treasure. And we'll talk to you, of course, in April. And thank you for your wonderful staff. And we encourage everyone to Google the Marksman, go by there, give them a call at 872-4130, and learn more about the Marksman today. George, all the best for the remainder of the month.
Thank you very much, Greg. You take care and be safe out there.
You too, my friend. George McClain right there, the owner of the Marksman in Newport News. Stay tuned.
At Hartman Dentistry, not only do you experience exceptional customer service with compassionate dental care, but with our in-house lab, we're able to offer same-day dentures. Options are available for all budgets. Plus, we work with 2 credit companies that will finance treatment for patients without insurance or limited coverage. Call Hartman Dentistry today to learn more about how we can fix your smile faster. Call 757-873-3407. That's 873-3407.
Mold, trash, rodents, snakeskin, even deceased animals. No, this isn't a Halloween shopping list. It's what might be under your house, in your crawl space. Schedule a free crawl space inspection with the Crawl Space Company and find out what's in your crawl space. Call 757-394-3494 to schedule your free inspection or visit thecrawlspacecompany.net. So, do you know what's in your crawl space? What tees you off? Presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
I want to thank our good friends at CP Shuckers, Locals Tradition, Shore Drive, Pacific Avenue. Go by and see the wonderful staff, a tradition in Virginia Beach. Delicious food, great appetizers, steak bites, sandwiches, burgers, all the games on TV, NBA, all the college sports. Go by and see Matt, Mark, and the great crew. CPShuckers.com. Lunch and dinner, late night, 7 days a week. Sports note, the North Carolina Tar Heels' last championship game came 2 years ago. They defeated Gonzaga 71-65 to capture their third title under Roy Williams, who was also an assistant under Dean Smith. All right, let's get down to the good stuff here. What teased me off? Of course, Andrew, the word yo, when somebody says yo. I mean, address somebody either by their name, but saying the word yo is kind of disrespectful.
Yeah, I guess it might be. You know, I'm kind of a beach guy, and I say bro, dude, all that stuff all the time. So I can't go too hard on those people. I understand. I think it's probably just cultural and how you grew up and that sort of thing, but I completely understand.
Yeah, because yo is really not many people's names. All right, those of us that like to embarrass people in public, especially at a group setting or a meeting, Andrew, you might be gathered around a table, not your family table, but just a business table or a meeting or an after work or after church or after school meeting, and somebody tries to one-upside somebody by embarrassing them, and they know they're embarrassing them.
Yeah, you know, we talked about my greatest fear earlier, and somewhere close to the top is being embarrassed in front of groups of people, so I'm really sensitive to that, and one of the worst feelings I've ever felt, you know, is making someone embarrassed and not meaning to, being completely unintentional about it. I hate that, and when people do it on purpose, it is awful. I can't stand it.
Well, some people like hot and cold food, but Andrew, trying to eat a traditional hot food like lasagna or pizza cold, to me is just not the same. You're going to go through all that effort to make it, and then to eat it cold, you're just not going to enjoy it as much.
Oh, man, see, here we go again. I love some cold pizza for breakfast. I'm trying to reform my ways, but yeah, especially Italian food, I'll kind of take it any way it comes, but I do love hot pizza, but I will surely just pull it out of the fridge from the night before and enjoy it.
Sitting down, Andrew, when you're sitting down after a long day and then getting up for any reason, that's not fun. It's almost like going to a movie than having to walk out to go to the restroom.
Oh, yeah, see, and I'm getting to that point in my life where things are sort of getting, you know, a little bit more painful, joints, creaks, all that kind of thing, so I'm beginning to experience that in a whole new way in this time of my life.
This is what teased me off as we continue. Walking in bad weather like rain or snow when you have to walk somewhere. I did it as a kid. I walked from Hilton Village, and it was very difficult.
Yeah, you know, my first job was working at a grocery store, and part of that was getting all the carts out of the rain, and I just hate bad weather so much, but man, when you have to be out in it and do anything in it or try and get somewhere, gosh, it's horrible, man, especially that cold rain that just goes right through your jacket and your pants. It's awful, man. I love so much having a car or just being able to stay in when the weather is bad.
Not just that, but driving in bad weather and the pouring down rain right near tractor trailers, that is the worst. And cars swerving.
Yeah, you know, Interstate 64 is bad enough, and of course 264 and everything else. Traffic around here is just not much fun. You add rain or especially snow. I know a lot of people are disappointed that we haven't had snow, but people around here just don't know how to drive in it, so I've been pretty thankful that we haven't had to brave that this year.
With that said, driving late at night or extended hours.
Yeah, I have fallen asleep behind the wheel once in my life. Fortunately, it didn't turn into any problems, but it's not a good idea. If you can avoid it, why do it? And especially if you're impaired in any way, no, it just causes too much trouble, too much headache. Don't do it.
Yeah, another thing that tees me off is bad breath when you're talking to somebody or bad BO. And that can be awkward when you're close by on a bus or a train or a car or in a business meeting. They don't know it, and it's awkward, but, you know, it's like something in your shirt or in your nose. You know, you have to eventually say it.
Oh, yeah. I worked with college kids for 3 years, and I can tell you a lot of those guys are not particularly interested in their hygiene. They have better things to do, at least they think so. And whew, I tell you, yeah, there's some crazy BO in men's dorm rooms, I can tell you.
It's like, for example, the next thing, you and I have a routine. We do the show. You have a routine with your kids. You have a routine with your family. But when you have to constantly remind somebody about a task or a chore, whether it's a job or work or a social or your neighborhood or church, having to constantly remind somebody, that takes away the fun of it.
Oh, absolutely. I've got a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and all it is repetition, telling them over and over again, put your shoes away, put your toys away. It can be infuriating, to say the least.
All right, that's what teased me off. And I want to thank our guest today, Father George Chioros George McClain, at Greg Bickle on Twitter, at GJB Radio on Twitter. For more, go to gjbtv.com, to the contact section, and also to the YouTube link on the homepage. Sports Scene every Saturday morning at 10 on WPMH. Tell your friends. For Andrew, I'm Greg Bicouvaris. We'll talk to you soon.